Here's a view with a camera attached to the boom of my Yagi. Center screen is roughly the shot towards Europe, and coming around to the west, that's northwest, and that's Japan, Asia, China, Indonesia. Coming around to Long Path, Africa, pretty much into the highest part of the hill behind the house. So that's my shot. Long Path, Africa, roughly center screen is Long Path, Africa. Coming around to VKZL, now looking pretty much due south, and coming around to the southeast, South America, that kind of thing. So that's the view from camera attached to the boom of my Yagi. Hi, I'm Jim, W6LG, your YouTube Elmer. Welcome to my radio room here in Rockland, California. If you're thinking about buying a new house or moving to a new location or renting a new place or relocating your amateur radio station to a different spot, what things should you consider? That list is really long and maybe darn near infinite, and I don't know it all. But there are some things that I've experienced over the years as I have moved. My background is I was licensed in 1964, so roughly 58 years, with a number of moves to different parts of California. I held a general contractor's license, a builder's license, a real estate broker's license, the highest level of real estate appraiser for assessment purposes in California. I was on the Planning Commission for a short time in one county, the Building Code Board, the Fire Code Board, the Building Code Board of Appeals, School Board, Emergency Communications Board. I testified in court as an expert witness. I worked as a county building inspector, county tax assessor in two counties. Both of those were deputy positions. And I've inspected hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of houses and appraised equally that many. Again, I don't know it all, but some things to consider if you're going to move. Some are obvious. For example, if the house that you're considering has a 120 kV line in the backyard, that's probably not a good choice, just because of the noise that would be generated by those power lines. The further you can get away, the better. As you increase the distance, the decrease in interference can go down exponentially. So every little bit you can get away from stuff like that, the better. Sloping ground is a really good thing. So if there's an area that has just even a gentle slope, 5-10%, that's great. Soil conductivity, if it has a lot of iron in the soil. Friends of mine who have locations like that have superior signals. Elevation to a lesser degree, but it doesn't hurt. By that I mean if you're going to buy a house in Colorado at 8,000 feet, that's better than being here at 152 feet by far. Another thing to consider is proximity to neighbors. Again, the further away you can get, the better. Not because you're going to be interfering with that neighbor, that it is just the reverse. That neighbor is going to be interfering with you. So the further you can get away from that source of interference, the better. Another thing to consider is if you're looking at a house and you've kind of figured out, okay, my radio room or radio equipment's going to be over here, what is the proximity to the electrical panel? How close? Is it going to be easy to add a 240 volt line into the radio room area? That's a very handy thing if you have an amplifier. Another thing too that often is discussed and is just frankly not true. It doesn't matter so much if you're on the first floor or the second floor. For 38 years, for most of 38 years, I was on the second floor, and I worked the world with ease. I don't believe there is such a thing as an RF ground. I know that sounds crazy, but I was watching a guy's video based upon a referral from a friend, and in this video, the expert said that he had run number 6 wire from the second floor down to a driven rod to be his RF ground. That makes no sense at all. That line is too long, it's too high in impedance. Number 4 wire, it just is not going to work that way. Electrical grounding, yeah. Lightning, yes. That's its own little category. Building a radio room and driving a rod in the ground next to your radio room and running a ground wire out to that, in most jurisdictions in California, that would be a violation of the electric code. There are some exceptions. I'm just saying in general, if you do that, you may be in violation. And it also doesn't make sense, and it's not safe. You want all current to flow back to the main panel. Another consideration would be who is in the area. Do you want to put up a station across the street from a contest station? I know that's not likely, but it's happened to me in 2 locations where I was adjacent to or close to another guy who had multiple towers and just beautiful equipment. And when he was on the air, I couldn't be on the air. Give you an example. In Burbank, at 2 locations, there was a guy on the next block. His name was Jack. Another house 2 doors up was 6 Papa Lima, W6PL, Don Brockway, and a few more houses up the street was Dave Strauss. And so they were just a few hundred feet away. It does make a difference because when your neighbor keys his kilowatt amplifier and he's got his Yagi pointed at your antenna, I don't care what equipment you've got on the desk, it can be trouble. The other thing too is, can you put up an antenna? And as somewhat of an expert on that subject, you need to do research, and you need to do it over and over and over again. And don't be afraid to ask. You can call, depending on where you are. There may very likely be a planning department in the city or not. They may not have any. They may not have any general plan. They may have, but that's changing across the country quickly. Also, where you have a city or a community, and then you have a county jurisdiction, and then you've got a state, each of those may have different requirements, standards, or rules regarding antennas. For example, the city may not care, but the county may. And because of that, it may be difficult to put up an antenna, if not impossible. In some areas, neighbors have crazy ideas about RF, and even though it has no impact, let me say that again, it has no impact on them at all or the value of their real estate, they still get crazy when a guy puts up an antenna next door. Antennas in attics as a last resort are very difficult, and I don't recommend it. I really don't. If that's all you can do, that's all you can do. But it sure is a lot better to have a hex beam in the backyard on a TV mast and some kind of rotator tied to your ICOM 7300. That seems to be a real common station. Does your antenna, your amateur radio equipment affect the value of houses around you? No, it doesn't. I'm adamant about that. You can't prove that it does. I've proven many times that it does not. And I did that recently here. Also, is the community ham friendly? Some parts of Arizona will welcome amateur radio operators into their community, and they want them for the obvious reasons. Others, and for example, in California, in the Bay Area, they have huge restrictions. Is there a place to put up that tower? What happens if, when you're turning the Yagi, one of the elements is over the property line? Or in some jurisdictions, they may take the view, what happens if the tower were to fall? That kind of thing. So look really hard at that. The main electrical panel. If you don't know what you're looking at, hire somebody. What is the grounding system for the AC supply? Is there something there for lightning? What kind of electrical panel is it? If it's a Zinsco, or I think it was called Federal Pacific, you really want to look into that. Google that and take a look. I had one of those and it failed big time. What is the capacity of that panel? Is it 40 amps, 60 amps, 100 amps, or hopefully 200 amps? Think about all the stuff that you have running in your house at one time, and then you turn on your linear amplifier in your station, get everything up and running, and someone turns on a toaster and a dishwasher and something, a hairdryer in the bathroom. You may exceed the rating of that panel. Are the outlets in the house grounded? Is the wiring in the house aluminum? What would it take to retrofit that? What is the year built? What is the year built for the house? Go to the county building department, city building department, whatever it is, and ask for copies of the records. Go to the assessor's office and buy a copy of the records. See what kinds of things have happened on that property. When I worked for the county, I would write copious notes about what was going on in that property. Stuff happens, and for example, there are houses you may not want to buy depending on what's occurred inside that house. I'm not going to go into details, but there are some places that you don't want to live in because of what's happened inside. Sometimes hazardous waste, that kind of thing, and that can't easily be fixed. Also, look to see if has there been any flooding ever. The assessor's records may indicate that. Why is that? Because the owner of the property may have contacted the assessor's office and said, look, we've been flooded, the value of my property has gone down, I have to do repairs, I'd like a reassessment. Stuff like that is in the records of the assessor. Be nice to the appraiser or the clerk that comes out and talks to you, make friends with that person, and then elicit whatever information you can. Proximity to commercial structures, schools, other things that can generate noise can also be trouble. Trees, not a big problem except for maybe the physical rotating of an antenna. They tend not to eat up RF or make any big difference. Rising ground is a big negative. It really does affect the performance of your antenna system. Also, let's say you're going to put the tower in the backyard and it's going to be attached to the house. Do you have a way to get coax out there? And can you run like LMR 400 to that tower, that TV mast, whatever it is? Those are the kinds of things that are, I think, important. Again, I'm just reciting this list of things that can affect your ability to get on the air and make contacts and have fun. If you have some things that you've thought about that I haven't mentioned today, let's add that to the list. So let's create a list. I'll write this listing out. I'll do it with bullet points. If there's some things that you've come across when you've bought or sold a house, share that with us. If you made a mistake, I've done that. Share that with us. What mistake did you make in buying that house? What didn't work out so well? As I said, some places welcome amateur radio operators, others don't. You may not know until you start digging. Don't be afraid to ask. Oh, also, don't take the real estate agent's word for anything. Internet, I didn't mention that. What's the internet like? Can you do like a 5G thing with T-Mobile or some other system if you don't have a decent internet connection at the house? Today that's becoming a bigger and bigger component in amateur radio. So there's one thing I did forget. Anyway, let's make this list. Maybe we can put an order to it. Let's discuss it, see what you come up with. I think it's an interesting topic that's not discussed. Thanks for watching, and thanks for participating. If you have not subscribed, please do that. I'm trying to build the number of subscribers to a much larger number. I'm Jim, W6LG in Rockland, California, where the height of my antenna is restricted to 30 feet, 7.3.